Chris and Chris Talk Movies.
All right, well, welcome back to our wonderful little podcast here. My name is Chris Ferry, and my co-host here is...
I'm Chris Huddleston.
And today we are I'm very excited to be talking about a really, really fun movie, also from the 80s. This one is called The Hidden.
I want this car.
Jonathan Miller would never do anything to break the law.
I need the keys. Thank you. Bye.
He is a very fine, very honest gentleman.
Something strange is happening to some ordinary people.
Yeah, that's Jack. Real nice man. What'd he do, rob a bank?
He's a law-abiding taxpayer minding his own business. Killed 12 people, wounded 23 more, stole 6 cars, most of them Ferraris. If anybody deserves to go that way, it sure in the hell's him.
I've worked homicide for 13 years, and I have never seen anything like this. You trying to tell me that she's part of this?
Step out of the car slow!
I want answers, and I want them now. Explanation won't help you. I want to know why it takes 15 shots to take down some sold-out stripper. Why 3 law-abiding citizens all of a sudden go crazy and start killing people. We're talking spacemen here.
Something gets in his way, he kills it. Finds a body, gets inside, uses it to move around.
Try for one on the tire. If you think this is easy, why don't you try?
Bye.
I guess a career in the police didn't really prepare you for this, did it?
The Hidden.
You think it's over now? You're wrong.
All right, that's a fun trailer. I love that it doesn't give anything away. If we're going to give a synopsis of this movie, Chris, you want to take a swing at it? Maybe I'll jump in there.
Sure. So basically we start out with, it opens with a man has just robbed a bank, and he hops in a Ferrari, and cops go on a big chase with him, and it ends in a roadblock and a shootout, and he winds up in the hospital. And then while he's in the hospital, there's another person in the room with him, and this kind of slug-like creature comes out of the man, goes into the other person's mouth. It's very gross. Some good, old school practical effects. And that man walks out of the hospital and kind of does the same thing. He goes and robs a store, steals some music cassettes and a boombox, and then he goes on his own kind of murder spree. And we're introduced to a police detective who's kind of investigating this, and then an FBI agent played by Kyle MacLachlan shows up to help on the case. He's been investigating this for a while, and he knows much more about what's going on in the situation than the detective does. And so we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that they kind of show their hand so early in the movie, right? We get that first guy going on a crime spree it's got a really strange feel to it, because he's acting in a really cavalier way, and it's not clear why. And there's a lot of shoot 'em up and car racing, and it's very dynamic.
It's a great opening, I think. It's fantastic.
And in terms of establishing a sort of a strange tone, I think it's hugely successful.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we got this, when we got this critter coming out of his mouth, I mean, it's really upsetting.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, we were like, oh, I guess that's the hidden, right? That's what's hidden.
hmm
And then we're playing catch up. So we're in on it from the very beginning, even as the other detective, not the FBI or Kyle MacLachlan, but the other cop struggles to get information out of Kyle MacLachlan's character.
Right.
And I just think that's it's an interesting choice. My original bet would be that you'd save that surprise for the end.
Yeah.
I just wonder what do you think about them choosing to put that right up top?
I'm not sure. I mean, it works in the context of the movie, I feel.
Mhm.
I think kind of the only sort of the mystery for the viewer is who Kyle MacLachlan is, because
Right.
it's not until pretty late in, it's so spoiler, but it
Yeah.
turns out he's an alien as well.
But
who
not a
is-
bug.
Right. He seems to, and that was one thing that I wasn't sure they, and I don't remember the names of the, what the species were or whatever, but I wasn't really sure. It wasn't really clear to me. Were they from the same planet? What did you,
Unknown.
yeah,
I assumed not. I assumed that, well, I don't know, maybe different species, obviously doing the same. It's the same MO.
right. But anyway, at some point, Kyle MacLachlan finally reveals to the human detective what's going on. That this creature he said what he killed his family and killed his partner, and he's been hunting him for 9 Earth years or whatever. Which of course
Right. Right.
the detective thinks he's nuts before he eventually figures out what really is going on. But it's interesting with Kyle MacLachlan because the way he plays it, he's so odd from the beginning. He's very almost like robotic in his movements and things. And there's a scene where he goes to the detective's house
For
and he
dinner.
for dinner, and he's like drinking a beer and he acts like he doesn't know what to do, kind of, and he gives him an Alka-Seltzer at one point and he puts it in his mouth.
Right.
So I don't think, I'm not sure if at that point we know that he's an alien, or if we finally find that out when he reveals to the detective. I don't remember exactly.
I think the clues build up.
Right.
He's weird at first,
Yeah.
and you suspect something pretty soon, and then what I'm left wondering by the end is he another bug, or is he something different? And he's
Right.
something different. But yeah, by the time he's at the dinner party acting acutely strange, it's pretty
Mhm.
clear he's not of this world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they have some fun with that. I'm not sure. I mean, I really like this movie actually. But there was it made me think of like, when I used to go skiing, and there'd be like a tow line that would sort of pull you up the smaller slopes sometimes. And the tow line it wasn't constant speed. Like there'd be these little hitches and jerks where it would sort of give you a tug, and then it would sort of slack off, and you'd be like, is this, and then so it felt like this movie kind of herked and jerked in a similar way, that some of it really worked and some of it I wasn't 100% sure what they were going for moment to moment.
Right.
Like it was also sometimes felt like it was trying to be a kind of a hard-boiled cop movie.
Yeah.
And then other times it was like clearly a sci-fi horror. They had a lot of fun. The various actors who were possessed by the bad bug
Right.
had a lot of fun playing the same character essentially, and the trailer makes it clear there's a stripper and a banker, and it's different walks of life. There's a cop at one point, right? And they all
Yeah.
they have this sort of tell where he kind of licks his lips and they get this glassy look in his eye, and you're like, oh, yeah, we get it. We get you're the bug.
And I love the he's so fun, or it is so fun because it's basically like a psychotic teenager or something, because he wants to. So it was, the one scene that we mentioned earlier where when it goes to the second person. So when we have the opening scene with the guy, he's driving the Ferrari and he's playing this really loud rock music, you know. Yeah. And then when he goes into the second person, that guy immediately goes to a record store and, like I said, just starts filling his pockets with audio cassettes and grabs a boombox, and then he goes and steals a Ferrari. So it's like he wants to listen to rock music, drive Ferraris, you know, rob banks basically. Yeah. And like there's one, you know, point where they say he just kills anything that gets in his way. So it's such a fun and like you said, that it's almost, you know, at times it's like a kind of like this ridiculous action movie too, you know.
Yeah. And it wasn't, maybe I missed it, but I didn't discern any particular motive of this. Like, I wasn't clear if he was hiding out on Earth or if he was just kind of on an interstellar tear. You know, what was he doing here? Like,
yeah, they don't ever reveal here. Yeah, they don't reveal that there's any kind of a plan or that there's, you know, there's other aliens coming or something. It's just he it's kind of like somebody just relying on all their base instincts. He's just going to do what he enjoys, and he doesn't care, you know, if anybody gets in his way, he's just going to kill them, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, so we ought to clarify too, that it's a pretty gross, you know, like parasite that lives inside the body. Yeah. And it seems to make the body, I mean, it kills the host, although he's walking around animated. But you know, it gets pretty shot up, and when the body gets damaged enough, it has to leave that host,
right,
and find another host. So he does kind of like take a bunch of gunshots to the chest, and you know, it seems impervious to the pain inflicted on the human body it's in.
Yeah, there's one part where in one of the guys where he's in a diner or something, and he's eating all this food, and he sees a Ferrari outside, and he just gets up and walks out, and he starts chasing after it, and he grabs his chest like, you know, he's running down the street after this Ferrari, and he grabs his chest like he's having a heart attack, which probably is, and he stops for a moment, and then he just keeps running, you know.
Yeah, because that's the guy he gets into in the hospital, and the guy is in the hospital because he's had a massive coronary.
Yeah, he had all kinds of health problems, you know, and the doctor was perplexed that the guy had just gotten up and walked out of there, you know.
But then, of course, and it's a good performance, and at some point he switches hosts into stripper, an exotic dancer that he sees he's either in the club and sees her. I forget exactly what transpires that has him move from the former host into her. Yeah. But it does make some 80s fun of, so this bug is genderless but to our human eyes, it's just this gross thing.
Right.
But it sort of the movie seems to imply that it's male and that it is attracted to human women somehow. You know what I mean? I can't.
Yeah.
There's just this sort of 80s logic of like, oh, it's an alien, you know, it's, you know, like the ladies. And
yeah.
Like, what? It looks like a giant cockroach hybrid, you know?
I think that kind of goes along with the thing of where he's just like a teenager almost, because he just loves rock music and fast cars, and I guess he loves women.
Yeah, well,
too.
I mean, I guess being in human men's bodies, I don't know. It's like it's another one of those things in the movie that if you think about it hard enough, it just falls apart. So you're just not supposed to. Don't worry about that.
I don't think you don't want to think, you know, like you said, don't think too hard about it. Now there is a sequel which I've not seen.
Really?
And the sequel may it may answer some of our questions. I don't know, but
Well, I feel
I've
like
not
we
seen
have
the
to
sequel.
we have to watch the
Yeah,
sequel now.
yeah, definitely, for sure.
It's undoubtedly worse, right? I mean, what my money's on, it's worse.
I would think so. I mean, I'm sure Kyle MacLachlan isn't in it. And now, this is a little bit different than the Wraith last week. I'm pretty sure that I can recall. So I saw this for the first time a couple of years ago, but I'm pretty sure I can recall seeing this in the video store. That I think I remember seeing the box.
Yeah.
But just never picked it up for whatever reason. So I think I was a little bit aware of this movie, but when I finally saw it, I thought, this one definitely is a lost gem of the 80s. I think, nobody talks about this movie, and this would be one, I think this would be really prime to be remade. This would be kind of the perfect kind of movie to remake,
Yeah, and you could
Not that there's anything wrong with it, but
no, but you I think in a remake you'd have a little more fun. So there's 2 times we see the bug.
Right.
And otherwise it's all performance and kind of story. It switches hosts many times, but you only see it switch hosts once, and then when it's ultimately defeated, it has to emerge and you see it a second time
right
at the end of the film. And I think that if it was a remake, I think you'd probably see a lot more squish. I think of the remake of The Thing that John Carpenter did, where that was the effect heavy to great effect. I mean, it was really gross, upsetting movie.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorites. But
yeah.
Yeah, it and another thing, when you were saying about some of the kind of issues maybe with the pacing, it's interesting to watch these movies, to me, from the 80s or the 70s or whenever. The pacing is so different from movies that we had. Everything now is, and our brains have been kind of wired to it. Everything is now is such quick cuts, which this movie doesn't really have. There's action in it. And also it's interesting to watch these older movies and this is a really simple movie. There's not a lot of complexity to the plot or anything, I think that's kind of a big difference with movies today. I think they're much more complex and also just faster editing and all.
It makes me, and I don't want to switch movies, but it makes me think I was just watching the final 2 Avengers movies, the Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah.
And the pace, the scope, there's of course there's tons of CGI in that, but the pace at which those movies clip along and the ground they cover and just the visual, they manage to not blow your fuses with too much, like you watch the Transformers movie and it's just too many whirling parts that your mind glazes over. You can't even track what's happening on screen because there's just too much activity to focus on. Not so with the Marvel films. They really manage not to tip over into chaos with those screens full of digital effects, but very, very different feel, pace. I think, and when I talk about the kind of herky jerky, there in this movie, there are dialogue scenes that feel like 70s. They're the cops are sitting around kind of chewing the fat, and that goes on for a while, right? And it feels almost Cassavetes influence, John Cassavetes influence, of this kind of naturalism of like, well, let's illustrate a relationship here by really really having a moment of true feeling dialogue that isn't necessarily driving the plot forward, but we're establishing, human relationships here. Right. And then there are other moments in this film that it's like, I'm a cop and I'm sick of you've got answers and I want them now.
Yeah.
It just feels very scripted and very kind of boilerplate, quote unquote movie dialogue. And then there was some real surprising stuff too. Like I think that the performances of the people being the bug felt really fresh and didn't feel canned. I mean, that was one of my favorite parts of the movie. I thought it was really fun. So there was a lot in this, kind of gumbo of a movie, a lot of different styles, and it made the pace feel a little herky jerky.
Yeah, I agree. And compared to last week's movie, The Wraith, this is a really well made movie. It looks good. All of the acting is good. There's not really anything about it. The effects are pretty good. It undoubtedly was pretty low budget. I just checked it made just under 10 million. I couldn't find a budget for it, but I can't imagine it was more than around 5 or 10 million, something like that. And this was before Kyle MacLachlan was in Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
So he wasn't really yet a star. And the detective, Michael Nouri is his name, and he has 130 acting credits on IMDb. I mean, he's still acting now.
He looked familiar to me for sure. I'm sure
done
I've
a
seen
lot
him
of TV. But he's kind of one of those guys, I guess, that has just been had a career as a character actor, because I can't think of something else that I've seen him in, but he has all kinds of TV credits. So that's kind of mainly what he's done.
I think we definitely have to look at the sequel of this. Do
Yeah.
you have it up in front of you there? Do they bring the same actors back, or is it just?
I think it's a different cast. Like I say, I'm almost certain that it came out in 93.
And this one was 87, or is that
87,
right?
Yeah.
87.
Not anybody I know. Raphael Sabarge, Kate Hodge, Jovan Montanaro. So I don't know. Yeah, it looks like a completely different cast.
Well, I'm curious now.
He the alien criminal from the movie is dead, but he left a few eggs which are hatching now.
Oh, okay.
So we need to talk about so in the end, so they finally,
yes,
Kyle MacLachlan has the special gun that this kind of laser gun that is the only way that the alien can be killed. So he goes to this political, was the guy running for, what was he running for? Mayor of LA or governor?
Yeah, or a senator or something. But he at some point, and it's nicely done, it feels organic, that he identifies, oh, this is a powerful person that gets to do, whatever he wants, more or less. And also somebody that, is harder to kill because he's got
a lot of protection. Yeah.
So he maneuvers a way to get around and take over the body of this prominent political, figure. And they're at a rally or an election event at the end, right? I just was handing it back to you because I interrupted, but.
Oh, no. So that is Kyle MacLachlan's chance to kill him. He gets a flamethrower and sets the guy on fire. So then there are all these cops shooting him. And prior to that, the detective had been shot by the alien a couple of times. And so Kyle MacLachlan, lights the guy up with the blowtorch, which then causes the alien to crawl out of his mouth, which he then shoots with his special gun that he has. So
and
then
he can't shoot him with the gun because it doesn't affect human flesh. They established that very clearly. So you got to get the bug out of the body.
Yeah.
To get it.
So then he shoots it, and all the people there see it. They don't really, they don't make any. Yeah, they don't make any mention of that later. That it's like, oh, all these people saw, and that was something that I was thinking of watching the movie. I thought, if this were today, that would have been recorded. I mean,
Of course.
it was a little kind of strange that they didn't seem to be really filming that, or if they did.
Well, and there's also a
later.
thing where he's like kneeling with the flamethrower. It's a sequence of him taking this guy down, and there are cops standing in the background. They're just at the certain point, everybody just stops pursuing him, and they just stand and watch as he flamethrowers this prominent political figure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I understand being frozen in horror when something alien crawls out of his mouth and then he zaps it with a golden laser or ray gun. I get that. Like everyone would just freeze and their mouth would drop open and be like, what? But while it's still a guy, whipping out a flamethrower and trying to torch a senator, it's like somebody would do a flying tackle. Like somebody would just.
And nobody, I mean, I don't think anybody would understand at that moment, oh, there's an alien crawling out of his mouth. You'd just be like, what the hell is going on? But so then the two of them wind up in the hospital. And
the two cops, the human cop and the now pretty damaged Kyle MacLachlan.
Right. And so the human cop is in really bad shape, and Kyle MacLachlan goes over and opens his mouth, and this kind of yellow light that looks similar to the laser beam that he shot the alien with comes out of his mouth. And then Kyle MacLachlan dies. The detective is there in the hospital bed, looking a little better. And his wife and daughter come in. And the wife immediately goes to him. The daughter seems reluctant. And he reaches out his hand, and she comes up, she goes over to him and grabs the hand. And so at this point, the implication to me was that now Kyle MacLachlan is in his body, right? And the daughter was like, oh, this isn't my dad. This is somebody else. She was the only one that could pick up on it. That's how I felt.
I think I agree with that. There is when he's at the dinner party earlier in the movie, goes over to the cop's house, he meets the wife and daughter, and he has this very strange moment where they're putting their daughter, who's maybe 8, 7, something like that.
Little,
they're putting her to bed, and suddenly this house guest is also standing in the room, and they're like, oh, okay, wildly inappropriate. What can we help you? And he's just fixated on the daughter, and he stands right at the foot of her bed, and they have this long stare at each other, and it's difficult to know what to make of that. I initially thought, is the daughter another alien figure, but I don't think at the end of the movie, I don't think that is the case. I think he's just missing his daughter and seeing, because then he sort of says, oh, I lost my partner and my family. And so I think at the end, it makes it upsetting because I guess I interpreted that the other cop was pretty much going to die.
Yeah, I did.
He wasn't going to recover from his wounds.
Right.
Whether or not Kyle MacLachlan's were fatal wasn't clear to me, but that the other guy wasn't going to make it. So him transferring and taking over that guy's life, essentially, and wife and daughter, is half. There's an altruistic feel to part of it. Like, I don't want them to be bereft of their father, and also selfish. I want to be, I want the family that I lost back, or a replacement.
Mm-hmm.
And the wife doesn't seem to notice anything different, but the daughter certainly looks into his eyes, and there's that sort of bookend of that long stare she had with, where she's sort of recognizing, and it's hard to tell. The little girl, kid actors, it's hard to tell exactly whether it was trepidation, and despite herself, she took his hand, or if the hand is supposed to indicate that there's finally some acceptance of it. I don't know, but it's weird and sort of upsetting. To me at the end.
Oh yeah. And that interaction that they had in their house, I kind of took that as the old trope of, that children and dogs can see ghosts or whatever, and I think it was like, I mean, it could have been that, maybe she was an alien too, but I just kind of took it as she knows that he's something else, nobody else can see that. And then at the very end, she's like, well, this isn't my daddy. This is somebody else. And assume, you could have taken it as Kyle MacLachlan was, that he healed the detective, but I really took it as he put, like his life force in him. And it also kind of brings up the question of, is he similar to the bad alien in that, does he continually change bodies too? Because there's the one scene where when he first goes to the police station, and he and the detective go outside, and he says, "I'll drive," and he has that Porsche, and the guy's like, "Wow, the bureau's paying pretty well now, huh?" He's like, "How much did you pay for this?" And he's like, "Or what was the price?" And he said, "I don't know." And he goes, "What, did you steal it?" And he goes, "Yeah." So and also that brings up the question of, I kind of assume that he wasn't really an FBI agent, that he just, had taken over this FBI agent guy.
Yeah, I agree. I wondered early on, like I wondered with the little girl, I'm like, oh, we're gonna find out that is the hidden, like They Live or one of these other things, that there are many of them among us.
Oh yeah,
and we don't really, like, and he's recognizing one of his own. But I think by the end, I realized, no, there's a good one on the planet. There's a bad one.
Yeah.
And we saw him get the bad one, and the quote unquote good one, or at least the not, violently destructive one.
Right.
Now is either just gonna stay here and live out this life, or his work being done. There's no, what's he gonna do? Where's he gonna go? Might as well stay here. It was unclear.
Yeah. And I wondered, since he said he'd been, now I don't know if that had all been on Earth, but he'd been tracking the guy for 9 years, and he had I forget where he said he had come from, but other states he had tracked the guy. But I just kind of want, I might be reading too much into it, but I wonder if it's kind of the same thing as with the bad alien, that the host body begins to deteriorate over time or whatever. It's so that he can only stay in that person for so long, which would bring up some questions about what happens to the detective, afterwards, if he starts to deteriorate or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I would say that I recommend this film unreservedly. I think you should check it out. There's a lot to love. It's a ride. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. Like I say, it's it's a lot of fun. It just seems like one of these movies that apparently, just kind of got lost in the shuffle. It obviously didn't make a whole, I mean, $10 million in 1987. I don't know what that comes out to now, but it's not real big money. It opened like $2 million or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's a well-made movie, and it's well acted, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a really good 80s sci-fi movie.
And I think for Kyle MacLachlan's career also, you can see how him portraying this sort of wonderfully weird guy that will feel familiar to people who know, his otother work.
That's a really good point.
See that other casting directors would be like, oh, who we ought to get is that cow guy from the the guy who was so weird in that thing.
Yeah. For people who are fans of Kyle MacLachlan from Twin Peaks or from Dune, I'd say those are kind of the two things that he's most well known for. He's really great in this movie too. I mean, like we said, it's a weird performance, but there's even though they're like kind of an odd couple, there's a little bit of a buddy cop thing going on, which is a lot of fun. And Kyle MacLachlan has great hair in the movie.
Yep. I was gonna say the buddy cop thing is another 80s trope. There's like that you could feel, whether it's the influence of the studio at the time or what, that it felt like it had to hit certain marks. And there are some There's some bits that I feel like are kind of like, oh, we gotta take a moment here and put this 80s trope bit in there for a laugh or whatever. And we want to make them feel a little more, you see it in 48 Hours, you see it in this buddy cop thing where one of them is the kind of oddball and the other one's the kind of hard-boiled whatever. And they definitely color within those lines for part of this film too.
Oh, for sure. They're it's interesting because they're kind of both the no nonsense cop. The detective is just like, he's not trusting of anything basically that Kyle MacLachlan is doing, but Kyle MacLachlan, because he's an alien, is, it's not like he doesn't have a sense of humor or anything like that, so it's not like it's funny in his oddness, but he's not, it's not like either of them is cracking jokes or anything.
Right. So check it out, and we look forward to reviewing another priceless gem. Maybe it'll be The Hidden 2. I don't know. We'll talk about it offline. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.